pasty skin isn't enough white balance for you.
All right, I got it.
Everybody?
You need it?
No, I just wanted to.
Everybody ready?
Yep.
Good morning. Last evening, the Sheriff's Office was dispatched on 2 different occasions to the Maple Crest townhomes over here on the north side of Arch Road. The first call that was received was a 911 call. It was for an armed prowler, and the prowler was a juvenile who was armed with a BB gun who was shooting at the complainant's windows. And this had gone on for some time. The lady reported to police that she had been trying to go to sleep and heard the tinging on her door and on her glass windows. Initially, she said she thought maybe that somebody was actually shooting. Got up, investigated herself, and saw that what she kind of described to be a 15-year-old child who was shooting a pellet gun at her windows. She called the police. Officers went out and weren't able to find anybody there. Had conversations with her, and after about 30 minutes of checking, left. And again, that was around 10:15. About an hour later, at 11:14, a second different officer was dispatched to a very similar type of call with the same complainant to the apartment. The suspect, after the first officers had left, he came back, continued to do what he was doing, shooting at a window, shooting at a door. The officer went out there, and this is a 2-year veteran officer. His name is Josh Livingood. And Officer Livingood went out, had conversations again with the complainant inside her apartment. He went in and checked from the inside out to see if any of these pellets had actually gone in through the windows, made holes in the windows. He wasn't able to find any holes coming from the outside in. Again, had a little bit of a conversation with her, and as he was going to leave, the complainant, she opened her front door, and a young male was walking by. She told the officer, "That's him right there, the one who I saw shooting at my windows." So the officer steps out of her front door, kind of up underneath the cover of the front door area, calls out to the suspect, "Hey, come over here, I'd like to talk to you." Asks the subject to show him his hands. So the subject turns towards him, lifts his hand, and shows him his hands. The Officer Livingood, begins to close that distance so he can go talk to him. And as things do quite often in police work, changed rapidly. The subject went from his hands in an upward position, showing it to the officer, reaching towards his waist, and from his waist he produced a handgun. That handgun the officer didn't see before then. It wasn't until he reaches for it, lifts up his shirt, and pulls it out, points it at him, that the officer realized what was going on. And again, this is happening very rapidly. The officer did not have his gun drawn up until that point, but as he saw that subject taking that handgun from his waist, he pulls his handgun out. Again, things happen very rapidly. He has to make that split-second decision. Fired 6 shots at that subject who was pointing the gun at him. One of those shots struck the subject in his left leg, in his calf area, around his knee to his calf. Still kind of making some headway with that. Officer closes the distance. The subject had fallen to the ground at that point in time. Officers repeatedly giving the subject instructions: don't pick up the gun, leave the gun, don't touch it again. This subject is reaching for that gun again. The officer closes the distance, now rapidly is able to kick that gun away from the subject. Jacksonville Fire Rescue is called. That subject is transported to UF Health. He's got non-life-threatening injuries, that 1 single gunshot wound to his leg. From what we have here at the scene, 6 shots were fired, 1 shot hit him. We have a couple cars that were in the parking lot that were also struck by the gunfire. That was in a downward towards the lower front end of the cars that were struck. We have now learned that they pulled on the officer and pointed at him. That subject is 14 years old. He has, according to his family now, been diagnosed with both developmental and psychiatric disorders. And he's had multiple contacts with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office for mental health issues. At this point in time, the Officer Livingood has been placed on administrative leave. That's pretty standard for our policy when use of force cases like this. Looking again into the facts that surrounded this, I will have a building, and I can take some questions if anybody has them. I'm not going to release a name tonight, and depending on what his history may be, it may not be something that, based on him being a juvenile, that I can release. but if it's something that I'm able to, I certainly will. But he is 14-year-old black male.
The airsoft gun, did it have the little orange stopper on the end taken off, or
The orange portion of the barrel. Upon close examination, you could see that it had the orange on it. Again, there's questions that we have, and that's certainly one of them.
You mentioned that you guys, I guess, had prior interactions with the victim before. Was it violent nature, or what type of interaction are we talking about?
I'll have more detailed information for that for tomorrow, but there are at least potentially upwards of 8 mental health contacts we've had with them. And again, specifics of those, I can't say for sure they've all been Baker Acts or not, but in some form or fashion, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office has had upwards of 8 contacts with him for mental health issues. And again, I can have more information about that tomorrow.
Were you able to describe this airsoft gun at all? Just kind of color, details? Was it pretty realistic looking?
Well, it's a large framed airsoft gun, similar to like what would be a 50 caliber Desert Eagle type of gun. It's a very large framed imitation airsoft gun. It is gold in color. The top part of the slide is dark, and again, the front does have the orange tip on it. But like I said, I alluded to the fact that these are split-second decisions. He didn't see this before, and it's in police work. 25 years of this has taught me things change very rapidly, matters of seconds, and split-second decisions have been made, and we will take those seconds and go through those and dissect every second that officer had, looking at what he knew at the time, and go from there. We conduct our own investigations into the criminal matter in this case, and also parallel, the state attorney's office will conduct their own separate investigation into the criminal matter. Once those criminal investigations are done, from an administrative standpoint, we will also conduct an administrative review of the use of force in this case to ensure that it complies with our policies as it relates to the use of force.
You mentioned that other cars were hit. How many cars are we talking about?
I think we had 2 other cars that were struck in the parking lot.
And windows and then
The front ends of the cars. This happened on a sidewalk in front of the parking area, so he was basically, the backdrop was the front end of these 2 cars.
You mentioned how quickly things can happen here. Do we know from the time he arrived to when the shots were
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I do. The officer first arrived on scene at 11:15 p.m. and I believe it was by 11:28 that he called for fire rescue to come. So within 10 minutes of being there, but when you come out, when you see that, we will certainly look into the facts that surround a call that was dispatched regarding a BB gun. It is such a factors that exist with these particular cases that you don't want to bet your life that what you're seeing is or isn't a BB gun or a pellet gun. The cumulative facts is part of what we'll look at, both for the criminal aspect and certainly for the administrative portion of this. Again, second by second dissection of what occurred here. We are, as law enforcement, obviously accountable for every shot that we fire. From the sheriff's office standpoint, we hold our officers accountable for every shot they fire and every bit of force that they use, from deadly force all the way down the continuum of force. And this will be part of that.
I know it's still kind of early, but with 6 shots, was that too much? Or could you just do 1 shot and kind of hit him, or? I know you're not actually counting how many shots, but
well, understand there's so many from the officer standpoint. There's so many physiological factors that are in play with this, from the way your body's reacting to the stress, to the adrenaline dump, to what you see or what you hear. You're doing this in a real world scenario. Unfortunately, it's not like TV. You can't shoot a gun out of a hand. We're taught to eliminate a threat. When we see the threat, we will try to, if we're going to fire our guns, we'll shoot for the largest body mass, because again, you want to stop that threat. It is in this day and time, and any day and time, it is a very dangerous job that law enforcement is faced with. The split second decisions that they have to make here in Jacksonville and all throughout the country. are judged later by citizens, by their agencies, and they should be. But the factors that surround these things and what the officers knew at that time, to say that 6 is too many, it's too many or it's not too many. The idea is to go home at the end of your shift and to ensure that you do so safely and have those interactions safely.
I know it's still early in the investigation, but did the kid's parents know that he was out shooting this BB gun, or are they looking at any possible charges as well?
Again, you answered kind of the same way I would. It's very early into this. We'll make some inquiries as to that. That wasn't an apartment complex where he lived, or the townhomes. He didn't live in there. He was known in there and frequented that area. I can't find any relationship between the complainant, whose windows he was shooting at, and him. She doesn't know him. So, trying to figure out what he's doing there. Did his mental capacity play into this? Again, part of what we're going to certainly look at, and whether or not he was home. When this occurred, this wasn't a violation of curfew. This was, around 11 o'clock, and Fridays and Saturdays you have a midnight curfew, so he wasn't in violation of a curfew. But again, if he's out that late at night with a BB pistol or an airsoft gun in his hand shooting people's windows, that's just, there's no good that can come out of that.
We know he reached for the BB gun. Was he able to fire at the officer during this?
We haven't found anything that has led us to believe that. The officer, the accounts that we have from the witnesses didn't seem that that's the fact. But he did indeed take that from his waist, from a concealed position in his waist, to an exposed, and pointed at the officer. So,
did the officer tell him to drop the gun?
Oh yeah, he was giving repeated instructions for him to do just that. And again, not sure what factors played into that, but he didn't do it. He showed compliance at first, putting his hands up at the first orders of the officers, and then that changed. And again, things changed rapidly, and that's kind of the situation.
Just quickly, living good. Can you give a spelling on that?
Yeah, Livinggood. First name Josh, 2-year veteran.
What kind of danger does this BB gun pose? I mean, did the officer feel like his life was in danger?
Well, again, these are split-second decisions that are having to be made in a high-stress thing. I mentioned the physiological factors that go through. What you're seeing is a handgun pointed at you, and to say, well, he could have or should have known that was a BB gun based on what the call was. What if he had a BB gun and another pistol? That officer, as a law enforcement officer, I don't want to bet my life on that. And you do your best to not Monday morning quarterback what these officers do. Again, we'll hold them accountable for their actions. But when it comes right to it, what that officer saw and what that officer knew, he has a right, just like every other citizen, to protect himself from that, which he did. And to know what he did or didn't see, or what it was or wasn't, it's a sad and unfortunate thing that it turns out that it was a BB gun. But it would be as equally sad and equally unfortunate if that officer had hesitated because he wasn't sure whether it's a BB gun, and I'm out here updating you on a dead police officer.
Is the area still blocked off? Your officers still on the scene, or is it clear right now?
It's in the process of being cleared. We're finishing our crime scene work for this evening, and it should be open here for the next 30 to 45 minutes. So, and at 11:30 tomorrow morning, I'll have whatever, not here, it'll be a policeman room. So, all right, thank you all very much. Sorry to leave you hanging. Grab that mic from you. Yeah, oh yeah. You'd have grabbed it sooner or later.
Yeah.